welcome to Chris's video. I don't know what's going on today, but I'm here.
So welcome to part 2 of building this roll bar. So like I said at the end of the last video, if you didn't watch it, we pretty much built the roll bar up to this point, got the main hoop done, got it trimmed up, got the floor plates done, and then I complained a lot about the heat and the nastiness outside. But now here in part 2, I have a second set of hands, which I've needed to get this roll bar put in, because one of the main issues that I've run into is the DAs have fuel lines on this side, which are very thick, and then brake lines on the other side of the car, which are thinner. So right now the car has more of a gap to this pillar than that pillar. And I did make the legs come inward probably about 2 degrees just in the way that I bent it. So next up, which is just like a common thing people do in building main hoops, stuff like that, they just ratchet strap it to pull it in just a little bit. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna scoot it over just a little bit more to where I am now from the other side, and then we can go ahead and get it tacked in place. And then after that, I can start building these supports, which I think I've decided to go from the hoop here, or the bends here down to the rear shock towers. We're gonna like partially plate the rear shock tower to give us something to weld to. And after that, we'll have to take up a harness bar, but I'll probably save that for another video. And we'll just kind of get slow but steady progress done in here, because I mean, what else have I got going on? What else do you guys got going on? I mean, probably not a whole lot. So, slow and steady wins the race. Okay.
Yeah, you got all the drains coming off that roof.
I know, there's 4 of them.
It's nice.
Yeah, I used to clean them frequently when the car used to get driven in the rain. Alright, so, ratchet strap. I forgot to grab the welder. I'll be right back.
Might work. It's janky, but...
Yeah, it doesn't take much pressure to pull these in.
Okay, yeah, I would be okay with this at least.
Just wrap this around a bunch?
Well, I mean, you could loop it back onto the strap.
Maybe?
Just try to, yeah, feed it on a little as far out towards me as you can, because it'll start to snug on it. There she goes.
It's already working a little bit. Okay, right there. And then
shift. It's kind of shifting, but it.
Yeah, because I want it off this fuel line is my thing.
Okay, I'm pretty much hard up on the brake line again, so.
Are you?
Yeah, it might have shifted and loosened up. Let me.
Okay, yeah, that should be plenty. And then lean it back a bit.
Felt like it shifted.
No, I just headbutted the thing.
Oh.
So there we go. Got the main hoop tacked in place. Now I'm going to leave the ratchet strap on here just because there may be a lot of tension when we go to take it off. We only pulled it in probably, I'd say what, 3/4 of an inch total?
Yeah, overall probably.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and lay at least one heavy part of the weld on each side before we release the strap. But ideally I'd like to get the whole thing welded up, and that's not going to take more in just a moment, so we'll go ahead and start that now.
Good recovery.
I lean way too close to my welds, and everybody at Hasport always made fun of me for it because I was like in them. But that's how I get good welds, is because I can see. But it always gets the best of me because I end up losing my helmet like that because I would headbutt everything.
You can see my lack of tie strap knowledge here. I'll take my hand right off. Like for real though.
Yeah, I suck with ratchet straps. That's why it's a fun game when Doge and I decide to go get something large and we have to use a ratchet strap because neither of us know how to use it for crap. Doesn't matter how many times I do it, I always have to relearn how to do it every time.
Got a little muscle. There we go. Yeah, same. You truck guys can laugh at us, but yeah, really, we have no idea what we're doing.
Well, I never had a reason to use one growing up, and then even now, the only reason I ever use one is to go get like metal, just to strap it down. And even half the time, I don't get a lot of metal at a time, so I just bungee strap it around as tight as I can to some straps on or to something on the bed. And I drive safe. So it's a couple hours later. It is still really hot out here. Now, Doge went home. He's got his own stuff to do. It was just really nice to have somebody come over this morning and help me do this, the main hoop part now that it's welded in, because I needed a second set of hands to be able to get the ratchet strap done, held in place, and then to help me align the cage while I tack it. So I decided now, after doing a little bit of talking and studying with some fabricators and stuff, and just structural integrity, so I am going to end up going to the shock tower because as it's explained to me and as I understand more now, obviously the shorter the tube, the less chance there is that that tube can have a failure point or a bend point or something of like if it fails. So going to the shock tower is going to decrease that length by probably about 22 inches. And then it's going to make it a solid joint. It's going to be super structural. And at that, like on the topic of structure, there's no structure I didn't realize back here. I don't know why I didn't pay attention. After this C-pillar, there ain't nothing back here. The hatch, that's just going crushed. It's all glass. So there's no need to have all the roll bar back here. So I am just gonna, in fact, go to the shock tower. So I'm gonna just get some measurements real quick. But first I gotta grind some of this paint off and let's plate that shock tower really quick. So for that, I don't need to use anything crazy. I'll go back to using some of that 14 gauge or whatever it is, 12 gauge that I have. Sheet steel, because we just need something to weld to. Since the shock tower is already very thick metal as is, we don't need to do like the 1/8 inch plate or anything like we did in the front. So to save myself a little bit of trial and error with cutting, or at least some trial and error, I'm just using a blank piece of paper and a Sharpie. I'm gonna just try and kind of like trace out, you know, a general template of the area that I need, and then we'll just transfer that to some metal. So something like that. And we'll bring it up to there, and then follow that line. So something simple like that. That at least gives us a good start. And mind you, part of the reason that we're going to be using the thinner material is because it's not going to just slide into place because of the contouring and the roundness. So we're going to need something a little bit thinner than what I used up front, so that way we can use the hammer and we can tap it around, lay some welds all the way around it, and keep it simple. So I do have to grind this much, a little bit more seam sealer off, I realized. But other than that, we're good. So with these both tacked in just like this, it's going to be easier to just come in here now with it all like bent around the tower and just take the cutoff wheel and shave the top and then weld the top seam. Both of them, obviously same process, but yeah, that's basically all we're doing. And now we can bring our leg down from the tower, to the tower from the main hoop, and it should be quite a bit easier to actually get the bar on there, and it gives us something to weld to. Alright, so I got the plate trimmed up and I got it spot welded across the top. Now, I do plan on running a bar across though, and I'm seeing now that this isn't going to be big enough surface area for me to run my tube, I don't believe, so I'm probably going to have to end up boxing this section like separately. But I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I'm just trying to work this thing in sections and leave everything tacked together for now, and then once I have everything like happy where I want it, then we'll come through and we'll finalize the welds. But for now, I am happy with how these shock tower plates are. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get some measurements really quick and see if I can't cut some tubes to go from the hoop to the towers. So I got my first rod, or first support cut here. For the hard part, you have to do this in an order. It's just easier that way. So I'm going to start with getting the angle cut for the rear end to bolt, or to go into the shock tower, and then I'm going to be able to get my notch like degree from there, because then I can just mark it and do the center line and all that stuff. So for me, the hard part is always getting the angle that I need here, especially on this one, because it's kind of a funky angle because the shock tower curves a little bit. So this one I'm probably going to have to like fake the funk a little bit, but we'll definitely make it work. It's just a little tricky. So I apologize for doing this one-handed, so I can't really hold the tube, but basically what I did is I just held the tube from the shock tower plate to where I wanted it roughly on the tube, which is right before the bend here, and then I just used my angle finder. This is just an analog one, nothing fancy, and I got my angle that way. And another way I double-checked that is I held it at the angle that I wanted. So say I wanted it like that angle, I measure the distance between the mating surface and the end of the tube there, and then I just add that to the other side of the tube. So in this case, on the bottom side of the plate here to where the other tube was here, it was 1 inch and 1/16. So then basically all you would do is you go on the opposite side of the tube and go 1 inch and 1/16 up, and that's where you want the tip of the blade to be when you make your cut. So I got pretty lucky on that one, and the 38 degrees was basically 1 inch and 1/16. So in that case, now I got this cut. It sits right on the shock tower plate like I want. I just got to orientate it as such. Yeah, pretty much just like that. And now I can go ahead and make my notch marks. So find my center line, or make my center line, and then go off of that. And if you guys need to learn it, if you guys want to know how to notch tubes by hand, the fabrication series has a fantastic video on it. That's how I learned it. I'm still not the best at it because I don't do it a whole lot. It's one of those things where practice makes perfect, but in this case, this is one of those situations where you have to do it by hand because it's kind of at an oblong angle, because this end of the tube is going to be facing one direction and the notch has to be facing the totally opposite direction. So it's a little funky, but it's the easiest way to do it. Alright, so I brought this into the next day. I got dark last night. Not gonna lie, this was the hardest notch I've had to figure out so far, and that's because this is sitting on 2 different axes. So I've watched 1,000 hours of the Fabricator series, and he has fantastic tube notching videos, but nobody goes into detail about the angles. So in this case, after sitting in here for just about 2 days now, since, I mean, being the second day, I spent probably 2 hours trying to figure this notch out last night, and I've been in here for a couple hours so far today. So I was trying to go off of the tube first and or the shock tower. I tried getting my center line, trying to figure out exactly where I needed to put it, and no matter how I drew it, it ended up being on the wrong side of the tube every time. Something that I just don't understand. So after enough frustration, my girlfriend finally came out and took a second look at it, and she had noticed that obviously earlier in this video, or last video when I made the main hoop, I intentionally leaned it backwards to follow the contour of the B-pillar. So she took that into consideration because of the way the angle finder works, and it's sitting backwards at about 4 degrees. So I was sitting here thinking this whole time that because how I had my tube sitting was 37 degrees, that was taken into account if the main hoop was at a true 90, which it wasn't. So I had to do the 37 minus the 4 degrees, so 33 degrees, and then that 33 degree notch actually gave me the fitment that I needed here. And then for the back side of the tube, just like I had mentioned in a few clips ago, how there was the gap on the one side to the mating surface, I had just measured that distance with just the tape measure, holding it just like this with my knee, and then I knew that the shorter side of the cut needed to be here, so I kind of went over, looked by eye, and just kind of eyeballed the mark up here. And then I just took that distance on the outside of the tube that I needed to cut on the inside, and then just measured it, marked it, and threw it in the saw. So, and then that way I made sure that the inside part here, you can see my line that was made there. I knew my measurement was a little off, so I was gonna start short and can take more off if I needed to, but thankfully I got lucky on the first cut, and now this thing finally freaking fits. And now I can go ahead and tack that one in place. So because I'm running out of daylight pretty quick, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna finish welding in the plates now, and then I'll come back tomorrow and we'll weld in these support tubes. And then next up after that will be the bar that goes across the main hoop and terminates behind the driver's seat. So let's weld these plates in. With the shock tower supports fully welded in now, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to make the diagonal piece. I don't know what that bar is called, the one that terminates behind me. So that one should be pretty simple. I do have to run up to Harbor Freight though. I need to get some bigger pony clamps because the ones I have aren't big enough to clamp both sides of the tube around the other tube, like, you know what I mean, so that way I can hold them in place to make my marks. I forgot that I already cut the section for the first part of the X back here, so I'm gonna go ahead and use these first. If you didn't know what pony clamps are, it's just these guys. I just needed a big one because I needed to open wide enough to fit around the 3 inches of tube that, you know, whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna just kind of mark it up where I want it. It's not as easy as cutting just 45s because these tubes both come inward angled a little bit. I don't know the exact degree. So it's gonna be easier to just notch these ones by hand, and that's pretty easy. We're just gonna hold it up, mark it, and then make our throat line, and then make our notch points. So this one took a little bit of finessing and a little bit of trimming, but I think it's pretty much good now. I'm not very good at notching tubes by hand. I don't have a lot of practice with it, and it's definitely a skilled trade. But it locks in pretty good. This side of the friggin' tube fits like perfect. And then the fitment on this side, it sits in the notch good. It's just the outside, I think I thinned the wall just a little too much, so it's not as tight of a fit up here, but there's really minimal gap, so I'm getting better at it. It's just it's really freaking hard. So now let's tack this in place really quick. Okay, we're good. So I went ahead and I got this first bottom part of the X done. I just finished notching that up. Very hard to do one-handed, let me tell you. And yeah, there we go. So that's gonna sit there, and then after this is tacked in place, I have to make the one to go from there, obviously, to there, because you can't cross the two tubes with one whole piece, obviously. So this one came out a lot better than these other two notches did, so I think I'm starting to finally understand the contouring a little bit with the flap disc, like, because the other ones don't have as much of this like curve around it like that, you can see. Because when you do the hole saw bit, it automatically gives it that cut, like that whatever, that curve. But when you're doing it by hand, it doesn't. So you have to contour that out. And I'm getting better at it though. I'm stoked. Well, I'd say I got that second tube on there pretty good because nothing's holding it. It's just holding itself. So let's tack that in place. And then all that's left is, like I said, these last two bars. Man, I'm getting more stoked the more I do this because I'm getting better at it literally with each tube. makes me really claustrophobic. Especially since I just always got my head stuck with the helmet on. But we got our main bar, our support bar, tacked in place. Now I'm gonna lay one more back in this bottom corner. I'm gonna go ahead and just try and get some measurements up quick. I gotta throw the driver's seat in here, get a height measurement for the harness bar, and that should be it. This for the lack of detailed stuff. I'm sorry, it's freaking hot, my brain is melting. But this is, a lot of it is me with a learning curve, learning how to do this as I'm going. So I really hope you guys don't mind just me jumping around a little bit. But this piece is the driver's side of the harness bar. Just got this notched up. So let's check the level. Right at 0, so we're gonna go ahead and lay our tacks. That fits right up into place where we need it. All right, we got it. Let's lay the last couple tack welds and wrap this thing up. There we go, dudes and a couple dudettes that are on my channel. We got this thing done up. Look at that. My very first roll cage. Well, this isn't a cage, I'm sorry. This is a roll bar. Cage would entitle the whole thing. But my first ever in-car, like, closed roof roll bar. This thing turns out super sick. Obviously, I still have to weld everything. I'm gonna do that in the next video. But man, I'm proud. Like, it looks sick. It's gonna be very functional. The only gripe is I wish this would have been a little bit tighter, but either way, it's still gonna be pretty darn safe and extremely structural. So let me know what you guys think. I am gonna add one more bar here. This is just probably gonna be like an inch, 1 inch bar, maybe. I don't know, we'll see. I mean, I am adding one for sure. I just don't know what size it is, but as for, at least for the actual roll bar itself, it is stinking done. If you guys stuck around to the end of the video, I want to thank you very much. Go ahead and comment blueberries. We'll say blueberries this time around if you made it to the end. If you guys want to help support the channel though, I do have merch. I do have a Patreon. I also have some stuff on the Big Cartel besides merch that you can buy, like DA specific stuff mostly at the moment. But anyways guys, if you're looking to get any work done and you're an Arizona local, follow my fabrication page at Sadowski Fabrication in order to get a hold of me. And I do more than fab work. I do mechanical work, engine swaps and stuff like that. Just get at me if you're interested. Anyways guys, thank you for sticking around. Do what you love, think about the rest, and we'll see you in the next one where this thing gets welded up and we continue making progress, probably finish prepping it for paint. Peace out.